It's mid-January and it's mid-afternoon on a weekday. I'm just setting out my rather heavily laden Caribou touring bike. I'm doing a hot tent camp tonight. Included in my teepee tent is a new inner tent that my wife bought me for my birthday. Tonight I'm actually going to be cooking sausage, beans and mash, a childhood favourite. And I'll also give you an update on what I intend to do over the coming weeks. It's coming up. So I'm in the Avon Valley. That's the main Bath to Bristol line there on that embankment. Just crossing the River Avon. And the river curves round and then it'll recross this railway about a mile or so, and that's where we're heading. But it's suddenly turned very, very cold. So I'm going to need plenty of wood to stay warm tonight. Anyway, about a mile or so, and then we're going to turn off left, head down to the riverbank. There's a train going along the track there. Look, very busy railway line this. Sometimes in the evening, if I'm getting the train back, say from Bridgewater or Taunton, it's dark. I love going along there in the warm coziness, a couple of miles away from my local railway station. And I just see the odd lights coming along here, and I know exactly what it is. It's this cycle path, which actually used to be an old railway parallel in that one. This is the eastern terminus of the Avon Valley Heritage Railway. It's called Avon Riverside. It was a specially built station actually for this Heritage Railway. There wasn't traditionally one there. And then we're going to cross the River Avon for the second time since I spoke to you before. So the river's gone round in a bend and an S, and that's bending back round. And that's where we're heading down there. And then when I spoke to you before, the river bent round and then did an S bend round there, and now it's coming back here, bending round. And then you can see there's a pontoon down there. Until about a fortnight ago, this was all flooded. The river's still very high, but there's a picnic ground just in there, behind the pontoon where I'm going to go. You can see the poles there. That pontoon was right up there. I can actually see the watermark where it was. It's about 1.5 yards up. That picnic ground was actually underwater. I checked it recently and it is firm. In fact, if anything, I think it's going to be quite hard to get the pegs in. That's our campsite for tonight. Kelston Round Hill up there. That's heading north up into the Cotswolds. That's looking towards Bitton and Bristol. Just past this bridge, there's a path off down which actually zigzags down into that picnic area. I've just gone to find a piece of dead standing wood there. Left it there, I'll walk back up to that. There's plenty down here. It goes without saying, when you hot tent camp, you don't use live wood. Well, why would you want to? It wouldn't burn green wood. Got to be dead wood, and ideally not on the grounds. It'd be too wet this time of year. Dead standing wood. That's quite dry by the feel of it. And here we are. It's got a bit messy down here the last few years. Quite a lot of rubbish here. They seem to have removed the bin, which just seems to be an excuse for people to leave rubbish. Oh God, look at that. That's awful. Anyway, that's why I'm heading over there. Okay, I've come just back up from the river, so my sawing doesn't disturb people. There are people on the boats at the moment, so I've got a bit of dead standing wood here. 2 big branches I found right up there. Dead wood, snapped very easily, and I've got some thin stuff for the kindling, so I need to start prepping that. I've got my wood burner in there, and in its canvas case I've got the axe and the saw, so that's my first priority, just prepare some wood. Okay, you're probably not going to see this, but you may hear it. I'm going to be sawing this stuff down. Well, it's taken me about 30 minutes to chop all that lot up. So I've got some big logs there. I've got my axe. Once I've got them down there, I'll actually split those in half. So I'll expose the dry inside, but a lot of it looks very, very dry. Got some medium stuff, then all the tinder, Plus I've got a bag of logs on the back as well, so I've got more than enough for tonight and tomorrow. Just wheeled the bike down to the picnic site then. So there's the footpath down onto that pontoon, the jetty. There's an old picnic table over there, bike stand, another picnic table. It's getting very untidy down here. Actually, you can see people have been having barbecues and fires. There's the remains of one here, lots of beer cans and debris. The litter bin's gone, unfortunately. Meanwhile, anyway, lent my bike there. I've got my German Army ground sheet there with all the wood I've just dragged down. I've got plenty of my own wood, so I'm probably going to put the hot tent up somewhere around here. So just behind, this is the River Boyd. So it's flowed down from the Cotswolds, those hills that run the other side. And it joins the River Avon just round there. In fact, later on we'll go around there and have a look. But I really want to get my tent up first and get the stove erected. See a little bridge going across it. I'm on my caribou. I've got all the panniers fully laden. So I've got extra cook pot tonight. I'll explain why. I've got a front pannier full of hardwood, and I've got a big bag of wood under there that I bought recently just in case I couldn't find it down here. So I've got plenty of big logs. I've actually split those as well into about 3, so I've got plenty of fuel. Plus the fact I've bought my Field and Trek water bag with a few litres of water in, plus 2 full water bottles, and I've got 2 cans of beer. Anyway, going to get the teepee tent up there, hang the inner up inside it for the first time, show you that, and then I'll erect a wood stove. I imagine by that time it's going to start cooling down and it'll be time to think about lighting the fire. As usual, I bought plenty of ground sheets out, but not as many as I used to bring out because the tent hinder's got a ground sheet, but I'm actually going to use as the footprint for that my German Army ground sheet over there, just to protect the bottom of the inner ground sheet. So this is the tent, how I've carried it out. That's the tent body. I've just stuffed it down into a stuff sack. The poles and the pegs I bought out inside the Woods Walker canvas carrying bag because there's so much spare space in there. I bring the gloves, the CO alarm, the axe, the folding saw, that sort of thing. I've got a little twig burn as well. And here it is. I'll probably pack this up smaller next time. This is the first time I've used it. It's a birthday present from my wife. She saw me looking at it and she said, would you like one for your birthday? I said, yes, I would. So she bought it. My birthday's not for another couple of weeks, but bearing in mind I'll be in Wetherspoons that sort of night, so I don't think it's appropriate to put this up in Wetherspoons. So she said it's okay to bring it out this afternoon. So first up, I'll get the teepee outer up with the central pole, peg it out, then I'll have a go at hooking that up inside. And it'll be over there, just to the left of where my wood pile is. With the teepee tent, when I first put this up, I did struggle with it a little bit. I think the secret I've found, this is just my personal opinion, is work out where you want the door. There's 2 doors, there's a front and a back. The front door, you've always got the stove jack there, slightly to the right. So I know I'm going to be facing that way, which is what I want. It basically gives me a view of anybody coming in and out, plus that I want to be facing the river. What I found is don't peg it out too tight because you need to get inside and force the pole up in the middle for it to start to form its shape. So what I found is, because it's like an octagonal shape, peg out every second peg point. So I've got 1, missed 1, there, missed 1, and then you get back 180 degrees. That's going to be the back door. Again, missed 1, 1. So in effect, you've got the 4 points of a compass: north, east, south, west. And even then, when I go inside and push the pole up through the middle to hit this spot there, that's when it forms its structure. Even then, I may pull a couple of tent pegs out. So I would say don't peg it out too tightly and then see how it goes. So that's my next job. Going to open the door, crawl inside, force the pole in. Even when I did that, because the ground is still so soft, even then, as I put the tension into it, I could feel it force one of the tent pegs out. So you can see there's a loose pyramidal type structure there. I can now go around and peg it out, shut the door up, peg it out, then guy it out, and then hopefully you'll see just actually how sturdy these tents are. That's the outer up then. I did go round, peg it out, I pulled it out with the guy lines to put tension in, and even then you have to go round and repeg it. And what I do is bring the pegs down as far to the ground as possible, because you do get a draft underneath there. But having said that, I think that's why it doesn't get any condensation in there. There's plenty of airflow, and with it being a hot tent, I'd rather have that airflow. There's a stove jack. You can see I could use it as a summer tent. Just pull that flap down, Velcro on there. That's just a stove jack. It's a bit like an oven glove material. That's where the pipe will come through. But I'm happy having all that ventilation. It's got two of these expandable vents there, you can see. There's plenty of air in. There's one at the back. I tend not to use that because that's where I have the fire. And if I do feel the smoke's building up, I just open the door. Plus the fact I always bring a CO alarm. In the past, what I've done, and I keep saying I am a relatively new hot tent camper, so I'm not an expert. I've just put ground sheets in there, so I'm not sat and sleeping on wet winter grass. So you can sort of see it's a kind of circular octagonal shape. So what I've always done is split it into 4 quadrants. I've tried to ground sheet out 3 and keep this quadrant here. I suppose you'd call that what the southeast quadrant, where the wood burner is. So that's just grass. So if any ashes or sparks come down, all the wood's there as well. It's not putting holes in my ground sheets. But today I'm going to try and get the tent inner in the back. So then all I've got to do is ground sheet this area. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, in here, there's a hook at the top you may see. And that's where the inner hooks onto. As I said, I'm going to put the German Army ground sheet out there to use it almost like a protective footprint. And then hopefully it's going to fit in that area there. First time, so let's give it a go. So it comes with 5 of these more sturdy tent pegs. In fact, that's what that came with. I didn't like them, to be honest, so I exchanged them for more conventional ones. So that's what I'm going to peg out the inner with. Okay, first time, not too bad. I'm sure anybody watching this will probably tell me what I've done wrong. But I started off by attaching the elastic hoop there onto that hook. Then I just pegged out these 2 edges. You can see they want to form a straight line. Probably going to have to redo that in a second. And then because the ground's so wet, being winter, I thought, well, I don't really want to crawl around the back of the tent. I've got the back door. So to get the back circuit pegs in, the 3 in effect, to form the semicircle at the back, I thought just opening the back door would suffice. And it helped, but in effect I had to repeg the tent out again, this half. So I had to undo it, get in, tension the back of that inner tent, and then redo this. So once again, I'd say when you're pegging the tent out first, putting it up, don't be too precise, because the chances are you have to redo it a couple of times. So I'm fairly pleased with the attempt. I am just going to put a kneeling mat down there and actually try and get that front entrance a bit straighter. So you can see it's got 2 entrances. There's a semicircular one at the back, which would correspond with the back door, although they're slightly out of line. But you've got an up and down zip here. That'll be my sleeping quarters. Oh, there's the outside fridge, all my water, beer for later on. Got some fuel, just in case I need it for cooking later. Obviously want to keep that well away from the ignition source, but most of my cooking hopefully will get done on the wood burner. So there's the Wood Wilker titanium collapsible wood burner. I'd imagine within an hour the temperature's going to drop, so I'm all prepared. It's my fire lighting kit on top. Still got some of these wood burner, they're sweepings from woodwork shops, and they're just compressed with wax. And then I just started off with some cotton wool. I think these are makeup wipes. You get hundreds and hundreds in a pack. You just ignite that on that platform, load it in to a preloaded fire. And then once that goes, it's pumping out a lot of heat. There's my camping boots for later on. They're really, really warm and cosy. Tonight, I'm cooking an old childhood favourite, sausage, beans and mash. Got some of Steve's sausages from Morland Road, spicy sausages. A couple of potatoes, even bought a masher. Be frying the sausages. Got some ketchup, beans, margarine to mash it all up, cooking oil. So that'll be my tea round about 7 o'clock tonight. And then this is the addition. It's made quite a difference, I think, because it's got what they call a bathtub ground sheet, so it really does keep the cold air from getting to you when you're sleeping. This thing pumps out a lot of heat until it dies down after dark, and you can get a little bit cold with the ventilation coming in. And as I always say, talking about ventilation, I make sure there's plenty of ventilation, but just as an insurance, I bring a CO alarm. Anyway, January the 16th, it's probably about 5 to 5 now. That's the tent all lit up. It's actually ever so easy to trip over the guy lines until after dark, and then they just light up. You can see all the tops of them there where they join the tent, but after dark they're just like really luminous lines. Just going to have a wander down by the river. That's the railway bridge up there, the old railway bridge. Just seen the cyclists go across that. And then this is just down onto the pontoon. I wonder what this was like a couple of weeks ago. As I said, I came down here and this was flooded. Oh yeah, all right. Right.
From within Rishi Sunak's own party and from those who want to toughen it up. Changes to legislation are being debated in the House of Commons ahead of a vote tonight.
You can see the pillars there have got ample leeway for this platform pontoon to float up. I saw earlier on where it had been up to. You can see some tide marks, almost say tide, river marks. Yeah, that's the view from down here. I was just talking to a guy down on the pontoon who lives in his barge down there. There's a few that are there permanently, and he was saying how high that pontoon was. And he confirmed this was underwater. Well, I knew it was because I came down and had a quick look, but I had to turn round. I did come down slightly, but you could just see it was all flooded and saturated down here. Anyway, I think the temperature is going to start dropping rapidly, so I better get myself all prepared. Pretty much prepared. Just need to I'd probably bring my bike over and do my usual, put a lock through it, but also twist one of the guy ropes through the wheels, so if anybody did interfere with it during the night, you know, it would wake me up. It's coming up to 5:30 and the sun's dropped, and so has the temperature. I'm just getting ready to light the stove. I've just changed out of all my cycling kit into warmer clothes. My socks and my shoes were getting a little bit damp. I've got them next to the fire. I've just slightly reconfigured the fire. I looked at it and it was facing this mesh, and I just thought, I know how much heat that pumps out, and why would I want it going in there when I'm out here most of the evening? So I've just turned it away, so most of the heat will be coming this way. I hope that's okay. Again, people watching this will have probably worked this out many times before, but what I don't want to do is risk burning that. I've also laid my shoes next to it, so when it does start pumping out the heat, it'll dry the socks and the shoes as well. But time to light the fire anyway. So I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. Fire still, ignite those. Put one of these fire starters on straight away, probably a couple. I've already started to put a couple of logs in there. As soon as that's going in the middle, I'll start putting thinner stuff across it. You get the idea. Okay, here goes. Oh, going. Get these on. Put it in the middle. One at the back, one at the front. the idea. There's the 2 logs I put in originally, firelights underneath. Just going to feed a few these thin pieces in. Make sure the dampener and the vents are open. There you go, that's burning away quite nicely. Maybe start putting some of that bit more wood on it. Try and get the bigger stuff going. You can see this is quite dry, this stuff. This is what I cut here. I have got the wood dryer as well, that cage there, the collapsible cage, that I can dry this out later on if it does prove to be a little bit too damp. So first thing I do is fire that up, then put some hot water on. Because I'm boiling potatoes tonight, I bought out a much bigger pan. I very rarely use this. It's from a Van Gogh cook set, but it's for 2 or 3 person. And I didn't bother bringing the lid out. I'm just going to use my frying pan, because once it's boiling, I can use the frying pan to do the sausages. That's just to speed up the water boil. That's looking good already. Now I've got 2 big potatoes on my chopping board. Potato peeler, need to get those peeled, chopped up in smaller pieces. Once that's boiling, which I don't think it'll take very long, get the potatoes boiling so I can mash them, then I can start on frying the sausages. Got a bag here for all the peelings, and then it's just a case of chopping them up and getting them in that. I can hear it starting to boil, you can hear it rumbling away. All prepped, ready for the next phase then. Just really stoke the fire up, put a lot of these logs in to really build the heat up. It's a large volume pot, it's nearly there. Oh yeah, not quite. I'm just taking this opportunity to heat the oil up as well, dry some more sticks as well. Oh, I think I'm going to have to reopen the door actually. It's so hot in here, it really is. As you've seen, I've had to reopen the door. Okay, the potatoes are boiling. Just going to put the sausages in that fat that's starting to spit. Cooking quite nicely, potatoes boiling, sausages starting to brown. I said it before, in my experience, the back of the stove near the pipe is the hottest place. So if I want anything really heating up, that's where I tend to aim for. Boiling the water there, now it's just simmering, frying the sausages. Okay, nearly ready. The sausages are cooked. The potatoes been boiled and mashed with some margarine. Just heating the beans up. I'm just about to dish it up. I'm already on my first lager. There we have it. Sausage, beans and mash with some ketchup. Bon appetit. You can probably see it's really warmed up in here. I'm down to my t-shirt now. I've got plenty of fuel so I can keep the fire going for hours. It's already freezing outside. When I went outside just before the meal, probably about 10 to 7, it was already very icy there and all the frost was coming out my breath. I said at the beginning of the video, I'll tell you a little bit about what's coming up in the next few weeks and months. So I mentioned on the Imber video that I'm taking part in Red January for about the 5th or 6th year. And that's just ride, run or row every day in January. It's just a reason to motivate you to do some form of exercise every day in January. So I'm about halfway through that actually. Today was the halfway point. Been really enjoying that. I've also entered a couple of calendar Audax events, just 100-kilometre rides. I started doing that last year to try and get my Audax mojo back. And it really worked to start with. The first few I really enjoyed, then the last couple I just didn't enjoy at all for various reasons. And it just taught me a lesson, just stick to the ones that you know are tried and tested, very well established and run by experienced organisers. And so that's what I'm doing, the 100-kilometre from Bristol at the end of this month. Then Fletcher's Flapjack, another very well established one from Chippenham in March. And then there's a Bristol one I normally ride in May. Whether I do any longer ones or not, I don't know. They won't be calendar events. If I do a 200, that would probably be the maximum. That would be a DIY event, but that's an if, not a when. I also mentioned about I really want to start exploring the CCT, the Churches Conservation Trust properties in Wiltshire. I also mentioned about I really want to start exploring the CCT, the Churches Conservation Trust properties in Wiltshire. Haven't really configured that yet or done any detailed routes. I'm going to actually ride them either day rides or overnights, possibly with a wild camp, and they'll probably be train assisted. And then my main tour this year is in June. Again, I've mentioned it in previous videos. I'm going to get a train to Leeds in June, stay in a travel lodge overnight, and then ride up the east side of the country exploring thankful villages. There's a big tranche of them up in the north of England, and so I'm going to go from Leeds up the east, cross the Pennines just north of Newcastle, then come back down the west coast. And then there's a bit of coast I really want to explore after I've visited the last of the thankful villages, all run by Cleveland and Blackpool, and then I'll come back into Manchester, spend the last night at a travel lodge before getting a train home the next day. I forget how many thankful villages there are, but there's a big cluster of them up there. I think it's about 12 or 13, and the distance will be exactly what I did last year, 385 miles. You know, complete coincidence, 600 kilometres, but I'll be taking a week to do that. That'll be a camping trip. It's now about 10 p.m. and I've just let the fire die down. Spent a very pleasant evening just with a couple of beers, letting my mind wander, enjoying the moment. And I'm now in my new inner tent. It just feels like a bedroom, and it may be psychological, but knowing I've got this, what they call a bathtub ground sheet, so it comes up. I always felt in the past with the TP tent, it was great when the burner's on, but maybe 2-3 o'clock in the morning you'll get the wind blowing through because they're built to aid ventilation, so this should help. Although it's only a very thin nylon mesh, not much more than a mosquito net really. It just feels like zipping yourself into an inner. It's psychological, it just makes you feel a bit warmer. Whether that transpires during the night, I don't know. If I just turn the lantern off, you may just see the faint glow of the fire there, just letting it burn down. I've got plenty of wood for in the morning, because when I went outside earlier on, I noticed my water bag had a layer of ice on it already, and that was about 8 o'clock, so I brought that inside. So it's definitely going to freeze overnight, so I've got plenty of wood for first thing in the morning. Anyway, I'm going to just sit here, look at that glow, and as I go to sleep, just think about what a fantastic camping experience this is. Good night, see you in the morning. Hello, good morning. It's now just gone 7:30 a.m. I got woken up by a couple of voices actually, and it was cyclists going by on the bike track. You may see one just going by there, some flashing lights. It runs along about 20-30 feet above me along there, about 50 yards away. And I checked my phone and it was 7:29. It's coming up to 8 a.m. now. As you can see, I've got the stove lit quite well. Had a couple of those fire starters left, you know, the wax shavings blobs, and I definitely kept a few pieces of dry kindling, and I've just put a couple of logs on to really crank up the heat. Got my coffee water on there, and I'm going to start getting the water warm for the breakfast as well, because that needs to just be boiled for 8 minutes in the bag, and then opened, left a minute, stirred, and then eaten. Just feels so nice already. Last night, these lights, it was just so cozy in here. And the inner, I have to say, is probably more psychological, but the fact that you're actually zipping yourself into an inner tent, what almost feels like a bedroom, just felt so snug and cozy, because I'd made my bed up when I'd arrived and set the tent up, and the bag had all lofted out, but there was just something nice about doing that zip up and feeling enclosed. What made the difference is what's called a bathtub ground sheet. You can probably see the black comes up a few inches. I'm not sure if it's obvious in this semi-light, but the ground sheet actually comes up about 4 or 5 inches. It just felt like I was protected from the draft. And I've got to say, I really was snug and cosy in there. There was moisture on the outside of the tent, and of course that came in as well. You can still feel bits of condensation, but nowhere near as much. I think the heat that's coming out now is going to evaporate all that off. Got my first cup of coffee on there. Already in t-shirt because it's so warm in here now. The water in the medium pan started to boil, and so that takes 8 minutes. So it's 8:24 now, so that just needs to boil in the bag for 8 minutes. I'll probably put the lid back on just to slightly cover it, unless it starts bubbling over. And I've got more hot water and for more coffee and my washing later on. That's the Wayfarer's all-day breakfast, boiled down for 8 minutes. I've left it to stand for a minute. The packaging's completely dry, and then that's looking inside. You can see it probably comes up to between 1/3 and 1/2 of the volume of the bag. Just give it a really good stir, you know, to even the heat around, to make sure there's not any cold spots. Steaming. I've never found them cold whatsoever. In fact, you have to wait a couple of minutes for it to cool down. And I've got some ketchup there, which I'm just going to dunk in spoonfuls to just give it a bit more kick. This is the location of my wild camp, Boydmouth. You will not find it on a map because it's just a name I made up. And it's where this river, the Boyd, which rises at Doddington, about 7 miles up yonder, up on the Cotswold Escarpment, flows down and joins the River Avon, Bristol that way, Bath that way. And along here, this is part of the River Avon footpath. There's a pontoon down there where barges moor. I was talking to one of the people that lives there last night. He was saying a couple of weeks ago this was flooded down here completely with all that rain we had in between Christmas and New Year. And I know that because I meant to come down here and do this camp in between Christmas and New Year. And I did a couple of recce's and I could see it was waterlogged down there. Gentleman was saying the picnic tables and the bike stand there completely underwater, and that pontoon, you can maybe see the poles that goes up and down with the rising river level. And he was saying he's got a photograph on his barge with his head near the white top, so that's how far it went up. There's the old railway bridge now, which is now part of the Avon Heritage Railway. You'll sometimes see steam trains going along there. It's the southern terminus, the other side of the bridge. And it's also partly shared with the Bath to Bristol bike track. Again, Bath that way, Bristol this way. So this is the picnic area. It's not as frosty as I thought it might be this morning. It was certainly bitterly cold last night when I came out of the tent just before I wrapped up and got into bed. But it's lovely and warm in there this morning. I'm already on my 3rd cup of coffee. Anyway, let's dive back inside, start thinking about packing everything up. Okay, I've just really cranked the heat up with my last log, the last few bits of cut wood. There's my sleeping bag. It's a Snug Pack Softy 10 Harrier. And there it tells you comfort down to -7, the low rating is -12. Now, I did have a cotton inner as well. They say that adds another couple of degrees, but again, I was toasty warm and that, always have been. It's a synthetic bag. Me personally, I prefer synthetic for practical reasons. I know the purists say down is more efficient and it packs up smaller, but I used to have a down bag and I found when it got wet, which it often did in the winter, you got these cold patches and it's virtually impossible to clean, really. Whereas this, you can just chuck it in the washing machine. In fact, I don't have to that often because that's what goes in the washing machine. I bought this bag in 1999 because in 2000, to celebrate my 40th birthday, I cycled across America for 3 months, and I knew I'd be crossing the Continental Divide in New Mexico in late winter. And even that, though that's fairly safe in the US, you know, the peaks were still the same sort of altitude as the Alps in Europe. So I just was unsure. So I invested in that, and it's performed perfectly. It's as good as brand new, no cold spots whatsoever. Even on the road, I could just spend a day just chucking that in a washing machine and it'd be dry by the evening. The only thing I've had to replace is the stuff sack. The old one just ripped because I just kept compressing it so much. So it's got, about 2 or 3 years ago, I invested in a new stuff sack which allows you to compress it down. My pillow is an inflatable Trackology, just several breaths blows it up, and I like them fairly soft. To be honest, I don't find it that comfortable. I keep meaning to invest in a foldable solid one. I'm just on the lookout for something that would do the trick and is small enough to get in my panniers. So my sleep mat has got 2 valves. That's the inflation one, and I've just undone the inflation one, and that's the pump gun. Within about a minute or so, this will all be shrunk wrapped. All the hard work's done for me. The only thing is it's a bit noisy. Okay, I've kept one stick back just to give the fire a really good poke. You can see I've really sort of tried to stir up the ashes and the embers. I always bring gloves for preparing the wood with the saw and the axe. Also, you can handle hot things. They're not heat proof, but they'll protect you enough just to unscrew the pipe and pull it out through. Then what I'll do is I'll take the stove outside, take the top off, just let all the heat disperse and just carry on prodding it until it's lost all its heat before I scatter the ashes. I've unscrewed the pipe, pulled it up through the stove jack, just left it over there to cool down. You can see where other people have been having fires here. I've actually dug a bit of a fire pit ready to scatter my ashes in. But first up, just quickly lift the stove out of the tent, pull the clasps back to lift the lid off, and then hopefully the heat will really disperse quickly then. And that's what I've just done. I've unclasped the lid, turned it inside out, so the heat facing side is exposed to the cold air. Just giving all the embers a really good stir. Leave that for about half an hour, 40 minutes. That'll be one of the last things I pack up. And then I'll be burying it in that fire pit and scuffing it all over. I will douse it down with excess water. I've got about a pint of water left, so I could douse that down just to avoid any fire risk. And at the same time, I'll roll the pipe down. That was warm to carry, but not excessively hot, so it's losing its heat already. It'll really disperse quickly now. Well underway with my packing now. So the stove is cooling down, starting to get stuff out on this ground sheet. There's the inner tent I've just taken down. It's quite bulky looking. I think what I'm going to do is bring it out as I do that one, just stuff it into a compression sack and bring the tent pegs out, probably with the poles and the pegs from the other tent in the Woods Walker canvas bag. This gives you an idea of the tent. Now all I need to do is bring that heavy duty ground sheet, so I'm not preparing food or anywhere near the wet grass. I can sit down and be warm. And also I always bring a small foldable table, so I'm preparing food way off the ground level. But the back now, I don't need to ground sheet it anymore because it's got the inner tent. My first impression of that tent is it's well worth a couple of extra minutes erecting it and a few ounces. I don't even know what the weight is. It can't weigh very much because there's not much to it, but it definitely makes a difference. I think so. And I think what you gain in weight carrying it, you probably save having to bring extra ground sheets out. So win-win as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to do a quick survey of the tent to see if there's any more burn holes. I think I might have just spotted one on the back, but I think that's probably from a previous occasion. Yeah, there's one there that needs taping up. I mean, how a spark got over there, I don't know. But anyway, you can sort of see I'm starting to make piles of things, hopefully within about an hour, ready to go. I'm actually quite warm already because I'm working. I've got my puffer jacket on. In fact, I'm sweating already, to be honest. I'm gonna have to be careful I don't get too hot. I'm about as far as I can go now before I have to dive in there and change into my cycling kit. So I've said this many times before, camping in the winter just takes so much longer because of the cold, and you've got to keep everything dry. So everything's in piles on ground sheets, sleep kit, cook stuff, excess food, wash kit, water bottles, all my devices, camera stuff, microphones, selfie sticks. I've got a 20,000 milliamp power pack that does everything actually for several days on a wild camp. And if I was on the road for longer than 3 days, I'd bring a USB plug and I'd just hop in places like churches and top that up, or if I stay. Okay, I've scattered all the ashes, trod them in, poured all my excess water from the water bag into it, turned it into a mush. Just going to start burying it in a minute. The water bag's now ready to fold. I'm just airing it on the handlebars just to sort of try and dry it as much as possible. The thing with the titanium wood burner, I don't know if other people find this, because they warp and twist a little bit, when you dismantle it, you've got to do it in sequence. And because I don't use it very often, I always forget what that sequence is, and you start thinking, oh gosh, it's not going to collapse. But as long as you remember, you've got to do it in a certain sequence. Collapsing the legs is last, but even that you have to do a certain leg first, otherwise it won't fold into itself. So that's it all folded. It's not that wide. That would go on top of it. I've got a couple of rubbers that come with it that actually protect all the glass. So before I band it up and put it in its bag, I'll be adding those, make sure the glass is protected. Then my next job now is just to scatter all that in. Probably use the stones to sort of cover the area. Probably goes without saying, but I've got a bag for all my rubbish. I'll be taking everything I bought in. The only thing I'm leaving is natural waste. A robin's just flown out my tent. So next thing to do is roll the pipe, get the stove all packed up safely in the bag. That's the Woods Walker canvas bag. There's so much excess space in the top, I just feel you might as well utilise it. So there's the pipe rolled up there, the stove is underneath there, all the accessories like the foldable, collapsible, twig dryer, the extra stove jack that I've got, and then I just use the strap there to tension down things like my gloves, the axe, the tent pegs, the pole, the foldable sword, the CO alarm. I just figure that bag's got the excess capacity in there, so rather than having it rattling about in the pannier, which would probably drive me mad like Chinese water torture, I might as well pack it out with things that would probably be a problem in my panniers anyway. It just makes packing everything else easier. It definitely adds depth to it, but I think the payback is just everything's in there and it makes packing so much easier. So I'm going to zip that up, put that in one of the panniers, which will take up most of the space, and then I can start packing things around it. And it's amazing what we're packing around it just in one pannier. So there it is in the rear right hand pannier. You can see it takes up most of the length and height, but there is room to put things down behind, but there's certainly plenty of room in the front. So I can put things like my chopping board, things that are quite squidgy like my sleep mat, and really pack that out. And it's amazing how quickly all that will suddenly disappear into just that one pannier. Okay, talk about a late departure. It's 20 to 1. I had no intention of rushing this camp whatsoever. I've tried to scuff up the ground where I've been, but it's just flattened. But bearing in mind this was under about a metre of water a couple of weeks ago, that'll soon rise up. Just quickly show you the River Boyd here. See there's a footpath down there. Not much more than a stream, and to be honest I don't know what separates a stream from a river, to be honest. Gosh, look, all these trees gone down. There's so much debris around here. I normally litter pick when I leave a wild camp spot, but there's so much here, bin bags. What I might do is come down in the summer, and if it's still bad, bring some heavy duty sacks down. I've got some heavy duty gauntlets at home and just tidy it up because I do love this place, so that'd be my payback. I'm guessing a lot of this came from when the waters rose, but you can clearly see people have been down here having fires, and some of the beer cans are probably due to people using this, well, for picnicking really. So I will try and give it a bit of a sweep during the summer, just as my way of paying back a little bit, not a sign of virtue. These robins, they've been round my tent all morning. That's just got a worm and swallowed it whole. Gosh. So the bag's all packed up. It's not particularly, oh look, it's on my patio now. Is it going to stay there? Robin redbreast just flew away. As usual, I've bagged up all my rubbish, bungeed it to the back of the rack. Normally I would look for the first bin to dump it en route. Sometimes I just actually forget it's there for a couple of hours and suddenly think, oh gosh, there's still some rubbish on the back. Because I'm only 5 miles from home, I may even end up taking that home with me. This is a spot, Boydmouth. Going to probably have one last walk over the bridge, then I'll be heading up that way, heading home. As you can see, it's got quite untidy down there the last year or so. As I said, I'm probably going to go to Screwfix and get some heavy duty bags and come down there and bag it all up and just leave it there, maybe let the council know what I've done. So I've one last walk down on the pontoon. Yeah, so these anchor points allow the pontoon to sort of like adjust with the river level. And that chap last night was saying his barge there, he took a picture of it and his head was by that white bit. So you can imagine how much this pontoon and his barge rose up during the post-Christmas floods. It's always been a favourite spot to come down here in the summer, just chill out. Quite often take my shoes and socks off and just put my feet over the edge. You can sort of see where the pontoon can rise and drop at these anchor points. Just quite often sit here, look at the swans there, wind turbine there, the old railway. As I say, you sometimes see steam engines going along there. Back up on the Bath to Bristol bike track, about 5 miles to home. That patch of green there behind the trees is where I was. You can see the pontoon clearly there, rises and drops with the river level. Whenever I ride by here from now on, I think I'm going to remember that conversation I had with that chap last night. He lives in the barge at the back, the blue one, that he sort of said during the floods recently it rose so far. He's got a picture of himself on his deck and his head was adjacent with the white at the top. That's how far that rose recently. You can see where it came up recently, look. That's all been just flattened. This was all underwater a while back. There was a place further up that way where you could hardly distinguish the line of the river. The only clue was a line of trees. The rest of it just looked like a huge pond. Anyway, time for me to head home. Thanks very much for watching. See you soon.